everybody. I said I was going to do this at 6:30, but what do you know? I am 3 minutes early. I don't think anybody's really going to complain about that. So, welcome. If you, I'm Jess, and this is Angry Nerd Girl. If you have any questions you wanted for DM tips, please drop them in the chat. And let's get started. I did get a couple questions from Discord. If you want to join my Discord, feel free to support me on Patreon. I will drop a link to that in a little bit, but Nightbot should do it shortly. And let's get started. Ooh, Mecha Dragon, right off the jump. The largest number of PCs I've ever killed in a single encounter. I don't think I've ever killed PCs. Actually, I've had them get down to death saves, but they've all lived. Um, yeah, I'm a very nice DM. Uh, yeah, I actually don't think I've ever had any NPCs die officially, like eternal deaths. I even had one, Alan Johnson, who played on 3 seasons of Paws and Claws, literally begged me to kill him constantly, and yet souped up his character so well that I never could. So I kept running deadlier, deadlier, deadlier combats, and he and the rest of the team just kept crushing it. So they all lived, and it Lynn Meyer, who played Baguette, the Corgi Shepherd, just kept taking like resurrect spells and revive spells. And so she was like on it with the healing magic, so nobody died. So yeah. Uh so I wanted to start out today with talking about NPCs and hooks. Oh, also, just I'll keep asking. If you have any questions, put them in the chat and I'll get to them. But a lot of times I think because people watch like Critical Role and they listen to podcasts where there's a lot of exciting voices, they see really exciting actual plays, maybe you watch Harmon Quest or whatever. People think that like they need to be an actor to play an NPC. And this is something that I addressed in the RPG Writers Workshop. But when you come down to it, and this is going to sound like, I guess, kind of not fun to hear, but mechanically, NPCs are a tool. They're a tool to push your plot forward. I don't know why I have headphones in. I can't hear any of you. And it's not like it gives me a beep when anything happens. So I'm taking them out. But yeah, NPCs are a tool to push the plot forward. So when you introduce an NPC, figure out why they're there and what purpose they serve. That means that whenever your players get into a tricky situation, you can bring an NPC in, and it's not necessarily railroading them. It might be reminding them of the stakes, like putting an NPC in danger, having an NPC ask for help, having an NPC like shove them in a direction that you might want them to go, or you think that maybe they should go. But mechanically, NPCs are tools to keep your players invested, to keep them going where you want the plot to go. Now, how can you make them interesting? That's really going to be on you and what your party is interested in. But generally, give them something they want, give them something they hate or fear, and give them something that they need. And make sure, importantly, that it all serves the narrative, because that's why they're there. Otherwise, we could just play pretend. Yeah, that's my little thing on NPCs. And if you want to drop a hook in, an NPC is a great way to do it. People get tired of finding signs on billboards all the time, asking adventurers to find a missing person or a missing item. We, on Three Flings, like, it comes up a lot, and that's just the nature of it because we're running the Uncaged anthology straight through. And, you know, with one-shots, you can drop them into a campaign. We're specifically making an entire campaign out of one-shots. So a lot of times Uncaged is pretty cool because there's very rarely the situation of you are in a tavern and you overhear something. But it does have a lot of, you see an ad for a missing person or you see a flyer for a missing person. So there was a point where a couple of the Three Flings were like, please God, no more flyers for missing people. And they actually avoided rescuing someone for a long time because they didn't think it was worth the money. So that was just my little tangent. But yes, NPCs can serve you and they can keep your players on track with what you want them to do. Like maybe they missed the item in a room that was supposed to direct them somewhere. Well, that's okay. Maybe somebody in the town has that item, or maybe it doesn't need to be an item. Maybe the item just had information and they can get that from someone who was trapped in a dungeon. Who knows? Uh, so, yeah, you don't need to be afraid of NPCs. You don't have to worry about doing perfect voices or sounding like Matt Mercer. You just need them to function in the way that your game works. Yeah. So if you have other questions, drop them down. I will go to one that Paul asked in Discord. That was, how do you balance encounters? He talked about how he'd been running encounters through Fobald Kite Club, Cobalt Fight Club, and they weren't coming out balanced enough. There's a lot of ways to do that. I personally think balance can be kind of overrated, but I also said that I haven't ever killed a party. So that's where I'm coming from. But also, particularly with Cobalt Fight Club, it can be really beneficial when you're planning encounters. It can be incredibly beneficial when you're writing encounters. But I've noticed, it's not perfect. It highly overestimates the deadliness of encounters. And there's really not a way for a simulator to check how well a party that works together and thinks strategically is going to play out. So, if you want, if an encounter is too deadly and you are in the middle of a combat and your team is dying and you don't want them to die, there is nothing wrong with introducing some NPCs who might come along to help to save the day. Now your characters are bonded to that group. Maybe the NPCs can ask them a favor, and now you have a new plot element into play. Maybe something calls the enemy away. Not everybody wants to fight to the death. Maybe they just wanted to scare them. Figure out some way for them to leave. If it has to be a fight to the death. I mean, a lot of DMs hate doing this, but if it's really bad, just reduce the hit points of some of those monsters. Your players are not going to be that upset with you that you reduced a monster's HP from 120 to 80 because they were dying and combat was going on for 15 rounds. That's generally not that fun for anybody. I wouldn't recommend it all the time because then you will forget how the monsters are supposed to work. But in a pinch, I suck at math, but that's some quick on the fly math that you can do. Thanks, Mecha Dragon. Yeah, it's okay to do a little bit of shrinking the monsters down to size or having them get confused. The monsters can hurt themselves in confusion. If your players are destroying... Hi, kitty. I don't know if you can hear that. If your players are destroying this combat that you have worked really hard to prepare, there's a couple things that you can do there. One is make them feel like big damn heroes and congratulate them. And just tell them wow, you really wiped the floor with this combat that I had planned, and maybe take some time because you don't know what else to do from there. Just take a minute to plan something else and really congratulate them. Or, once again, bring in that environmental stuff. Maybe it starts hailing. Maybe it gets really, really hot all of a sudden. And that heavy plate mail is suddenly really uncomfortable to wear. Maybe there's a lich or a wizard who's watching and suddenly decides to get involved because, oh, we don't like super powerful people in our neighborhood. Weather can be particularly fun if you're playing something like Mouse Guard, where you are very small. A little bit of rain can wipe a party. Or ideally not kill them, but it actually can in Mouse Guard. Maybe there is societal pressure to not... Sorry, my camera's shaking because of my cat. Maybe there is pressure to not kill these people. Maybe you're supposed to just... Or the players. Maybe the players are just supposed to scare them. Maybe there can be a lot of factors in there. Maybe one of the loved ones of the enemies appears and begs for their life. Or something. Like, there's always some way to add an interesting twist to it. It's okay. Also, say hi, Trisket. There can be traps on the battlefield. Traps are a quick and easy way to shake things up, make things more deadly for your players, and kind of terrify them forever, for anywhere. They will, if they can't trust the ground, they will, not run headfirst into danger for very long when the ground can fall from beneath them. So, yeah, that's my very long answer on encounter balancing. My short answer is don't worry about it. As long as everybody's having fun, it doesn't really matter. If you have any questions, put them in the chat and say hi to Trisket. Math Nerd. Oh, you're running a campaign from Uncaged? That's so awesome. Any tips or advice? Yeah. One thing that we've been doing, well, I advise you to watch Three Flings, our show every Friday at 8 p.m. But also, putting together a campaign of one-shots. Oh my gosh, you do? I haven't seen you in the chat, but that's awesome. I'm so glad. Probably because I'm busy running the game. So one thing that I would pay attention to is the environment. That was one of the first things we did when we put together the Uncaged anthology. We put together Three Flings even before it was published. I think volume 2 was about to be published. 3 was going to editing, but I had access to all of them. So I put all the tiers together, then went through all the adventures to see what kind of terrain they were going to be in, so that you're not like in the desert in the summer one day and then in like a frosty mountain the next, unless your players are up for that kind of like the environment doesn't matter, anything goes. Maybe the whole place is in the Feywild or Wonderland or something. I would make sure that you are going in kind of tier order. I would also, if you were doing entirely the Uncaged anthology, I would have your players be prepared that they're going to be very low level for a very, very long time. Uncaged is 90 adventures, and 40 of them are levels 5 and below. So I would just make sure that they were up for that. Also, one thing that I learned to do, thread some hooks from a couple adventures further down early. So like when we played the one with, was it lions, were-tigers, oh my, lions, liches, and were-tigers, oh my, I can't think with this cat staring me in the face. I'm so sorry, Trisket. You are causing such problems for the stream. At least you are cute. That opens with adventurers finding a displacer kitten that has wandered and is like advertising the place. I had them find a displacer kitten, I think 2 or 3 adventures early. So then they were traveling with a displacer kitten looking for this place. They had a reason to go places. They weren't just kind of wandering aimlessly. So that would be my advice. Give them a reason to go the places that they're going. Yeah. And that's so cool that you're doing Uncaged. Have so much fun. And I think they're gonna mix it up so that they don't have like 5 hags in a row followed by 5 banshees in a row. That would be my other advice, because there's a limit of female coded monsters in the monster manual. And especially in the low levels, Uncaged tends to just hit those a lot. So be sure that you are giving them a variety of things, or they will get bored quickly. Yeah. So Diana had asked, I think this is one I've answered on here before, but how do you manage rulings on rules when you really have no idea what the answer is, but you want to keep the game moving? If two easy things, one would be ask if anyone at the table knows. And if they don't, just make up something, see if it works for everybody, and move along. Don't take your time of your game out to look up something unless it is extremely important in the moment. Generally, you know the game, you're running the game. Whatever you assume is correct is probably close enough. Then later take a look and see how close you were, and let the party know next time you play. Like, let them know, oh, I actually kind of screwed up. That wasn't the rule. We did it wrong. And you can either tell them we are going to play it correctly in the future, or put it up to them. Like, sometimes they'll like the made up rule and now you have a house rule. I played with a DM who had a lot of fun house rules for 7C. Yes, exactly. Trust your instincts. Yeah, you know the game. It's your game. You know your players. And it's unlikely that, the rule you're going to come up with is rocks fall, everyone dies. So just have fun with it. As long as you check it later, you should be fine. And just make sure that everybody has fun and you keep the game moving, because nothing stalls the fun like having to pull out the books or go online and look up a rule, especially if you're playing an older edition of a game. So maybe you have to delve deep and then be like, oh, well, let me check Board Game Geek and see what other people say. It's so frustrating. So yeah, just make it up. Keep rolling. Nightbot is really not being my friend today and not giving any information to any of you. But yeah, how are you all doing? Are there any other questions? What's been going on? Those are all of the questions that I already had. So, yeah. Was there anything else that you wanted to know? Ooh, a fun way to introduce TTRPG to people who have only played D&D for a one-shot. Are you talking about... Okay, introducing a non-D&D TTRPG to people. Okay. It would depend on the party, but the table. I would ask them what they like about D&D, and then it's always easier to explain to people why you want to play this new game. What is exciting you about this other game? So it's generally easy to get people to play Pugmire or Monarchies of Mao if they're fans of Dungeons and Dragons, because you can just say, oh, it's just like D&D except you're a dog or you're a cat or you're a lizard. If you want them to play something like, I already said Mouse Guard. Do you want to be a tiny adventuring mouse? Do you like Redwall? Let's play that. If you want to a lot of people go to Dungeon World first after Dungeons and Dragons. I actually don't recommend that because I think it's so close to D&D. People think it's a great way to introduce Powered by the Apocalypse to people who are into Dungeons and Dragons. I actually think it is a good game. I enjoy it. I had a lot of fun as a druid in Dungeon World. But, it also has the same baked in problems with race as Dungeons and Dragons. However, I think because it's so similar, that can be where people get tripped up and then are like, oh, I just don't like PBTA. So maybe show them something completely different. I almost said Alice is Missing, and it's because I just played it. But be like, oh, well, you really like the dragons part of Dungeons and Dragons. Why don't we play a pillion? And then we can be dragons. Because, we always talk about how there's not enough dragons in our game. So let's be baby dragons and like create a world together. Or if you have kids or are around kids or just want to feel like a kid, like I do sometimes, play Dinosaur Princesses. You literally start the game by coloring. And for me, that was enough of a sell. Like one of my friends just said like, hey, do you want to play Dinosaur Princesses? And I was sold by the title. But then with the add-on of, so you start by coloring your character. And I was like, yes. So, yeah, I would say instead of being like, I know you want to play Dungeons and Dragons, but instead tell them about like what is exciting about the game that you want to play. That is the shorter version. I'm sorry, I'm very wordy today. So yeah. Are there any other questions tonight? We've talked about NPCs and hooks. We've talked a little bit about combat. Also, combat can be different in every system. Today's combat talks was mostly on D&D, a little bit on Mouse Guard. But maybe if you have a party that, I keep saying party when I mean to say friends. Maybe if you have a group of friends that really likes the combat aspect, you can introduce them to another system by telling them about how other systems do combat differently. Like combat is going to be very different in Monster of the Week and in Warhammer Fantasy and in Age of Sigmar Soulbound and in Call of Cthulhu than it is in Dungeons and Dragons. So, those are all just different ways to explore it. Like if they like swingy combat, if they like gritty, deadly combat, showing them something like that. So this was my, I guess, quick and dirty DM tips. If there's no other questions, I do want to draw your attention to the fact that it is Zine Quest right now. And I was going to promote a zine that I'm not in, and help tell everybody to go fund it. But it funded while I was setting up my OBS, which is awesome. So instead, I'm going to say, go support D36. I wrote a like short romance game for it called Just Gals Being Comrades. You play as lesbians who are waiting for basically your day to seize the means of production. And maybe as you wait that day, you fall in love. So yeah, there's a lot of other stuff in there that's very cool, like Bone Spurt by Alex Clippinger, Things the Meat Says by Kat Evans. There's a very cool one by Laura Evans Laura Gist, wow, Kat's partner, where you play as women who are either being led to the guillotine or are watching the guillotine in the French Revolution and talking about what the nobles have done. Question from Tyler. Ideals and flaws seem to be the most important part of NPCs in many games. Any recs on coming up with good ones for many different compelling NPCs? First or third? Any recs on coming up with good ideals and flaws? So I think a lot of times we get tripped up on the word ideals and flaws. I think this is a disservice that Dungeons and Dragons did to us. There are lists you can look up. There's PDFs where it's all the personality traits, bonds, flaws, and ideals. I think NWorld has, whether they be one-dimensional or 3D. Thank you. Yeah, I think NWorld has a list out there. You can just grab like a PDF of literally all of the ones that D&D has ever published, and they're compiled. And that can give you a good idea. Like I said at the top, I tend to prefer thinking of it as like flaw is a judgy word, and a flaw is often hard to role play in that way. Like a flaw could be like I'm clumsy. And okay, well that's actually not. It's like okay to role play, but it's not something that's really going to dynamically affect your actions. So that's why instead of flaws, I would instead recommend saying like things this character hates or things this character fears. Like, what are things that a player could do or say to this NPC that will get a volatile reaction from them? And then how will that NPC respond to that reaction? Will they stop talking to them? Will they throw them out of their store? Will they spread rumors about them all over town? Will they cut their head off? What will they do? How do they respond? Yeah, that's what I like. And that can be as broad as like they really hate when people chew gum to they are terrified that you will find out that they are living a secret life kind of thing. That can give you a lot to work with in terms of character. I'm sorry, my cat is making really weird noises, giving himself a bath. He's right in front of the mic, so if you hear anything verbally, that's just him. And ideals, again, like Fiona Guys said on Twitter today, I think she was talking about like, what do they want and what do they need? Because those are different. Like, maybe what a hag wants is to have an entire town as her puppets, to have them all bending to her will. But what she really needs is for her cat to come home, kind of thing. Maybe what she needs is this final ingredient for a spell that she's trying to do. So those give you adventure hooks. Those give you things to work with, things for players to play off of. I also like giving them overarching goals or dreams if they're an NPC that's going to be there for a long time. So like, I made a book of NPCs that was for Scarred Lands. That was basically like people that you can hire to work on your pirate ship with you. And one of them was a monkey who's like a 9th level spellcaster. And he doesn't know if he was a monkey. What was his name? Mr. Tibbles, I think. He doesn't know if he was a monkey who was awakened and learned to cast spells or a wizard who got stuck as a monkey. But what he wants, or like his long-term goal, is to find that out. But he's actually afraid to find that out. What he hates is when people laugh at him. And what his favorite thing is like bananas, but he's afraid to eat them in front of people because he wears a top hat and people laugh at him when he is the monkey in a hat smoking his big pipe and eating bananas. This was a long tangent again. I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on today, y'all. I'm going to blame Trisket right here. But yeah, so like wants, needs, fears, goals, that ideals and flaws sound very fancy, but it's not as playable, I think. Also, you can do like wants, needs, fears, goals, long-term goals as bullet points, and just have it like on a list when they encounter this NPC. If it's an NPC that doesn't need a stat block. So yeah. I hope that was helpful. Oh, good. You said it was. Yeah. Detect ideals and flaws. That sounds really cool, but that could be terrifying for a DM, especially if they want to detect ideals and flaws for a character that you just like made up off the top of your head. Like if they're asking for ideals and flaws of Boblin the Goblin. Yeah, I would go for like what they want, need, or fear. Basically, because yeah, what would your flaw be like? He doesn't brush his teeth. I mean, that's a flaw, but it might not be helpful in their situation. So that is going to wrap it up for tonight. Thank you all for joining. This was kind of a spontaneous thing I decided to do yesterday, and you all voted for DM tips, so it was great seeing you all in chat, asking questions. Support D36 if you want. I already got paid, so it doesn't do me much of anything, but it's going to be a really cool project. And if you want to, come support my Patreon, hang out with us in the Discord. We do cool things occasionally. And when I write a game for like itch, if I write a game that isn't under NDA, I try and give my patrons like access to it so you can see the process of me writing it, which is a little bit terrifying for me, but also ensures that I actually do write. So have a great night or day if you are watching this, and be safe. Trisket, stop bathing yourself for 2 seconds. Say bye. Say bye to the kitty. Mwah. All right. Bye, everybody.